lack of autonomy, the second part, brings us to unacceptable intrusions into artistic freedom. Again, to illiberalism and the stifling of dissent. When such autonomy is compromised by a real or perceived, externally imposed or self-imposed, adherence to what might or might not be palatable to those currently in power or to a particular political ideology, we are then headed in exactly the opposite direction from our constitutional mandate. We then have all the trappings of a fascist state. Authoritarianism can take different forms. It is most visible when imposed top-down, as we can so often see in brutal regimes. But the other way of undermining a society predicated on individual liberty is to eviscerate public institutions from the inside out. One way of doing this is, naturally, to compromise their independence in decision-making, that is to say, their autonomy. Jason Stanley's book, How Fascism Works, The Politics of Us and Them, is a superb and eminently readable analysis of the methods of this dismantling. Fascist states focus on dismantling the rule of law and replacing it with the dictates of individual rulers or party bosses, and incidentally, an independent judiciary is a favorite target. Tyranny, Stanley explains, referencing Socrates' argument in Book 8 of Plato's Republic, is often the result of a strong man seizing democracy's commitment to liberty and speech and using it against itself to consolidate his position and undermine democracy itself. The essence of fascism is its rejection of pluralism and tolerance. These are very real perils for any government. I would argue that any government that either explicitly or implicitly demands this sort of fidelity is a government that before long is doomed to catastrophic collapse and oblivion. A liberal democracy founded on a constitutional precept is not just a concept. It is, as Tom Ginsburg and Aziz Haq say in How to Save a Constitutional Democracy, a matter of daily practice. This practice depends on a degree of institutional differentiation. The doctrine of powers, separation of powers, we all know, is one dimension of this. But it also depends on key institutions that are born from constitutional ideals and are to be informed by those ideals, remaining autonomous and true to the intent of their governing statutes, not to a malleable, immediate political expediency. Many of the most egregious transgressions of liberties come not from the leaders themselves, but from civil servants and bureaucrats tasked with policy implementation or governing this or that institutional body. Parallel to the Film Certification Board are our state-controlled cultural and art institutions. For the same reasons, they too must be allowed to function autonomously in service of their primary purposes. All art is political, and art is nothing if not discourse and dissent. If it is not that, it is just so much pap. The purpose of art in every form is to question, to doubt, to look askance, to disagree, and to present an alternative perspective. In a finely realized address in Mumbai recently at a literary event, reviewing the purpose of different art forms and their relation to freedom, liberal democratic ideals, and constitutional values, Justice Chandrachud said that the libertarian idea of constitutional law wants all individuals to be autonomous and rational. Yet individual autonomy is fragile. Institutional autonomy needs to be made of stronger stuff. Conformity to a political or socio-ethnic ideology takes away dissent, and by prohibiting it in a designated art space, takes away the physical space for dissent. It must, I argue, be open to the director of a museum or an art institute to insist that an art or his work has value and meaning, even if it is directly opposed to or even questions or taunts a particular ideology or stated political intent. In India, this is perhaps much more important than we realize or acknowledge for one overarching reason. The single largest patron of the arts in India is the government. We do not have the kind of mammoth endowments that museums and art centers, especially in America, do. But a lack of financial autonomy must not ever be allowed to translate into a stripping of functional autonomy. If we permit that, we suppress and subjugate art. If we do that to prevent the articulation of an opposing or countervailing narrative or perspective, then we drive ourselves away from our stated constitutional ideals to a place of illiberal conformity.